6:36, good time. This is the Board of Adjustment meeting. Please join me in a pledge to the American flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good evening and welcome to the Morrison County Board of Adjustment public hearing. I have a few items to cover before we get started. Please sign in at the door if you have not already done so. There you will find a detailed handout of the step-by-step procedure we will follow tonight. If you wish to take one, please put any electronic devices on silent mode. Also, please note that all testimony is recorded for the record. Members of the Board of Adjustment are appointed by the County Board of Commissioners with one member from each of the 5 commissioner districts. Land Services staff is here to assist the Board of Adjustment with its duties. The task of Board of Adjustment is to consider requests for variances and appeals from an order, requirement, or decision made by a county zoning official in accordance with the state law and county ordinance. Each request is considered on its own merits. The burden of proving a practical difficulty rests with the applicant. If a variance is granted, it is granted to the land, not to the landowner. There is a protocol for how we will proceed. For each variance request on the agenda, we will hear a staff report, hear testimony from the applicants, and then the board will discuss and gather more information as needed. Next, I will ask if there is anyone in the audience wishing to speak on the request. I will ask each party to come to the podium, state their name and address for the record, give their testimony. Please be as factual as possible and direct all statements and questions to me. After all testimony is complete, I will close the public hearing portion of the process. Then the board will review and discuss the case in terms of our finding of fact criteria as required by Minnesota statute and county ordinance. We will have a series of votes, discuss whether conditions be made, and have a final motion to approve or deny the request based on these findings. After this final vote on your request, you may leave if you wish. Okay, we have 2 items on the agenda tonight. The first item on the agenda is Dwayne and Rebecca Klisch. If the applicants would come forward and get up close to a microphone. 18289 Nature Road, Royalton. Application for a variance to expand to a Tier 2 feedlot within the setback of the city of Royalton, located in Bellevue Township. So will you pull up a microphone really close and state your name for the record?
My name's Dwayne Klisch.
Brian Steppen.
Thank you. Staff report?
Yes. Again, Mr. Chair, this is a variance request to expand to a Tier 2 poultry feedlot within setback to the Royalton city limits. And this is located in Section 36 of Bellevue Township. The ordinance reference for this request is 1209.1, which requires a 2,640-foot setback from incorporated cities with populations greater than 500. Here's a plat map of Bellevue Township, and the red dot is the location of the parcel. And then here's the variance request received from the applicant. And a site drawing also provided by the applicant. Then here's an aerial photo of the property. And then some site photos taken at the viewing. The applicant lives on this 105-acre property in Section 36 of Bellevue Township, and the property is adjacent to the Royalton city limits. And so here is a aerial photograph of the parcel outlined in the aqua blue, and then the dark blue line is the Royalton city limits. 1,320-foot setback from incorporated city limits with a population greater than 500 people is required for Tier 1 feedlots. A Tier 1 beef poultry feedlot currently exists on the parcel with 251 animal units. The feedlot is currently non-compliant for setback from the city limits due to the beef holding areas being within the 1,320-foot setback from the city limits as required by county ordinance. And here's another aerial photograph of the area with the setbacks from the nearest animal holding area on the beef feedlot and then also from the poultry barn. The applicant recently completed a pollution fix that brought the feedlot operation into compliance with Minnesota feedlot rules. A 2,640-foot setback from incorporated city limits with a population greater than 500 people is required for tiers 2 through 4 feedlots. The applicant is proposing to construct a second poultry barn south of the existing barn. The addition of the barn would increase the feedlot animal units to a tier 2 feedlot. The applicant is requesting a variance to encroach on the setback from city limits. The nearest beef animal holding area is about 100 feet from city limits. The proposed barn would be approximately 1,450 feet from the city limits. Aside from the beef open lots, the poultry barns are total confinement. If this variance is granted, a conditional use permit request would follow, and a manure management plan and environmental review would be completed. The farm has an 86% offset rating, and the City of Royalton has provided a letter of support for the request. This was in your packet, and then here's a copy of it here. A portion of the property is within the City of Royalton's source water protection area for wellhead protection and high vulnerability for drinking water supply. And then here's that map. The applicable comprehensive land use plan goals is agriculture, goal A1, objective 1, objective 4 and 8, goal A2, goal A3 and A4, objective 1, and objective 3. And then the applicable Morrison County Comprehensive Water Plan goals and objectives is groundwater goal 1 and 2, surface water goal, objective A, land use and development goal, objective A. 159 notices were sent. No comment was received prior to the public hearing other than the one from the city. And there are your finding of fact and decision questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Does the applicant have anything to add at this time?
No.
Okay. All right, board, do you have questions?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
not a question at this time, but I just wanted to state that I wasn't able on Friday to come out and view the property, so I'm going to listen to what the others have to say here tonight to help make my decision.
Good reminder for me, too. For the record, we were out on the 12th at, I'm not sure what time of the afternoon, but it was Amy, Clint, myself, Marv, and John. And thank you, Brent. Okay, any other comments? Amy, could you go back to the slide on that well water?
The map?
Yeah, the high vulnerability of, figure 6, I guess it is.
That one?
Yeah, yep. And there's a shaded area, and then there's also a blue line there. Could you explain that a bit for us?
So this is just the various, levels of protection and area for the wellhead protection for this that serves the City of Royalton. So the blue line is the wellhead protection area, and then the darker orange is rated as high for the drinking water supply management area vulnerability, and then the lighter yellow is moderate. So the area that is within this farmstead is rated for high for the water supply management area vulnerability. And then the actual wellhead protection area is outlined in blue.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit? Does this affect the amount of water or the quality of water? Or is
Quality
it
of
both?
water. It would be quality of water. With the wellhead protection area, generally it's for the quality of water and contamination, and the vulnerability of soils for contamination for the drinking water supply for the city.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
So as I'm looking at this, it looks like the barn, the existing barn is not even on the yellow, which says high. It's kind of on the corner of that. In the new barn, proposed barn is even further away, correct?
Yes, that's correct. But we look at this feedlot as a whole, and so because the beef operation is within this area, we're looking at this as a tier 2 facility because it's the poultry and the beef together. So we look at that on the sum total when we're looking at a tier change. So that's why it's included in here.
Okay.
And then there was just an existing fix. There was a runoff pollution fix off the feedlot, off the beef feedlot.
Yeah.
That was just recently fixed, and so that certainly does impact this.
And Mr. Chair, being I had the floor here yet, I wanted to comment. When I was talking about eliminating beef, I read this that says the plan is to downsize the beef lot. So that's where I interpret that. But it sounded like that lot was downsized and that problem has been taken care of. Correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Marv. Anybody else? Perhaps, Ellen, are you planning to speak on this?
I've been to the
If
site.
he's
but
going to,
I
have him come up
I'm
to
not
the,
versed on-
I guess I was just wondering if we should look at him as a resource or,
but if he's going to provide comment, have him go up to the podium,
Right.
not yell from.
right. Are you, yeah, that was the question. Are you going to or not?
Yeah, I haven't really been involved in it.
Okay, all right, thanks. Perhaps the applicant, you could respond to Marv's observation there and the downsizing of your feedlot. This obviously should be an area of concern to anybody who's in that wellhead and water quality protection area. What are your future plans and so on? I assume, asking that question, Amy, that if the beef feedlot wasn't there, it wouldn't be an issue?
It would certainly be of note, its proximity, and it would still be need a variance because
Right.
the poultry barn doesn't meet the setback either. So we'd still be here for a variance
Right.
regardless of the beef operation.
yeah.
The wellhead protection area, I would probably show that to you anyway because when we're looking at the purpose of the setbacks from city limits, this is one of them. Because typically, and sometimes, the wellhead protection area is not contained into the city limits. And so that is certainly something that you should be looking at when you're looking at encroachment on a setback from a city limit.
Thank you. So with that in mind, Dwayne, or is it Brian? Brian. Go ahead.
There will be a reduction in animal units as far as the beef is concerned, and also the one that proposed pollution area that we had, that we did fix, is also gonna be shrunk. It's gonna be a smaller impact with buffer areas around it. And in the future, it's just reducing the beef cattle numbers in that spot.
Can you give a number?
You had a number before, was it like 6 in that area?
Yeah, 6, 7.
Six at the highest. They're gonna be used just for family.
Okay.
Just for butchering.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else have questions? Okay. Clint?
Just to give a little bit, maybe helps Brent a little bit too, if you'd look at the figure 4, Brent, that'll give you quite a bit of a idea of what this property is. But just some comments I had was when, you look at Royalton, and the whole city limits of Royalton, it's a very ag-orientated town. So when you get around it's the city limits. Outside the city limits, there isn't really a lot of rural residential. Right tight to Royalton. If you get out of the city limits, it's all ag all the way around it. And so that's just one thing I wanted to bring up. The city council, when they met, every single member on the city council approved him to put this extra chicken barn forward and go up a tier. So that's just some comments. One thing I'd like to just say is, we didn't go up into the beef yard and look at that, but going back where that chicken barn site is, it's one of the cleaner feedlot parts, poultry facilities that I think we've been to. If you guys, I mean, it's clean there. It's a great job. I could see why the city of Royalton kind of thought that it would be fine to do. It's all hidden by trees. Heck, I never knew that there was a chicken barn back there. You always look at the neighbor to the north and see what they have, and you know, you didn't think of anything being behind there. It's so well secluded. The odor, if there is a north or southeast wind and it gets into Royalton, a lot of it's shielded by the trees. You know, we're always asking applicants on some of these barns, hog barns and poultry barns, to plant trees around to help with some of the site and the manure smells. Here, it's already there. The only thing maybe I would look at here is, I don't know how the plan is. Maybe I'll ask the applicant this. You know, if this was gonna get approved, is there anything that you could do, any measures that, I'm sure when you build this barn, you're gonna have water flow somewhere, right? Either off the sides into grass or a certain direction. Is there any way that you could have that, so make sure that no water flows to the east? Or west. It'd either flow to the south or to the east. Just, I don't know, I'm just asking that. That'd be my only thing. You're out of the source water protection area, but it's really close. So that would be kind of my comment or my question, if you gave any thought to that.
All the water right now is actually flowing east.
Okay.
The only puddling, I mentioned
Yep.
when we had the meeting where we were parked, just when we have heavy rains, it might puddle right there.
Yep.
At the edge of the gravel, but everything is designed to go east.
Okay.
And then there's like a holding area back in my hayfield
Okay.
for overflow if you get a super like 6-7 inches of rain.
Then, Mr. Chair, can I ask one more question?
Sure.
So that,
Keep it related to this rather than the feedlot permit, the CUP.
well, it is.
Okay.
So right now, when you clean out this barn, where do you stack I'm assuming you get rid of the manure right away, but you clean out on the west end or the east end of the barn?
I usually go at both ends, but I don't push it, I carry it out, and then I
Okay.
put it in various spots in different locations, usually out of the, out in the field areas.
Because I just think if we'd clean out more to the west, not west, I keep getting, to the east, then you'd be away from the west part as far as for smell and stay away from the source water protection area. That'd just keep you away farther. That's why I asked that question, which way you
Okay.
clean out.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you're also, to clarify, you're also on the waiting list for a manure stacking slab also, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And that was gonna be placed towards the east.
It would be between the both barns. Right now, we're working with Central Soda to get the manure plan finished up. We got approved to the NRCS to go through that. Yeah, the second barn will, since it's gonna be on the south, we're gonna have it on in between the two barns, so it's easier to.
About right in the
know.
middle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Yep, thank you, Clint. All relevant to our question tonight, which is the close proximity to the city. So future planning should be done with that in mind. All right, anybody else? Okay, if the board doesn't have any question, we'll open up for public input. Is there any public input at this time? Okay, sir, come up to the microphone, state your name for the record.
My name is Curtis Gregory, and I live in Royalton, right across from the high school. My wife and I's concerns with expanding their chicken barn is, one, the close proximity to the city well that's right up there by the city garage, or cold storage building, I should say. And then two, I've noticed that when we have a wind blowing out of the east, there's times that we get a lot of cattle smell coming, cattle manure. And I know when you're driving down the roads and you're driving past a lot of chicken barns in the county, they just reek with the ammonia coming off those barns, depending on the wind as you're driving. And that was one thing we would not want to see, when we have an east wind. Additional chickens out there when they're cleaning the barns or whatever, I think is probably the worst. And you get that odor and that ammonia smell blowing into your house. It's just crazy.
Okay.
That was our main concern. The cattle operation is probably the worst right now. The chicken, with single barn, I haven't really noticed an issue, but it was always the cattle. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there any other comments? Any other input from the public? One more time, is there any other input from the public? Okay, thank you, and if not, we'll close the hearing to public input at this time. So, any questions before we go to the criteria questions? Okay, remember this is part of a process. This is a variance just to be within the city limits. The CUP process, we're familiar with that, where odors and water and other things are also considered at that time. Go ahead, Marv.
Mr. Chair, so their offset rating is 86%. How can they bring that up? What would the measures do to bring that up?
Mr. Chair, the thing that's making that rating so high is its proximity to homes, and open lots. And so there's really not, aside from completely removing animals, and moving, and moving those animal holding areas farther away from homes, there isn't probably a whole lot that's going to change that.
So it's going back to the beef cattle that are creating majority of that issue, being it's a lot closer, correct?
Well, that offset rating is taking into account both poultry barns and the beef. So that's the whole collective, all of the animal holding areas is what's going into that calculation. It's not a requirement anymore within our ordinance to meet a certain offset rating, but it certainly is still a tool that we use for you to give you some sort of gauge on that.
Okay, and I was also thinking as the applicant, as measures to help bring theirs up, if there would be something they could do to bring their numbers up also. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marv. Any other questions?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
how many beef cattle do you have total?
Just under 20.
Okay. Want me to comment to that?
No, I thought you were gearing up for more.
Well, I raise beef cattle for a living. I don't care where you are. I don't think 20 beef cattle, unless you leave your manure piled up for 2 years in a row, is going to be terrible. If you're feeding out 20 steers, possibly, but 20 head, I don't know. I don't know where the offset comes, but whatever. That's no part of this. It was a question I had to ask.
Okay, thanks, Clint. Applicant had indicated that they're planning to downsize to 6 head, total head, I assume,
In that one lot, Dave.
One lot, yeah.
in the one lot. Okay. All right. Other thoughts before we go to the questions? Okay, then let's hit the criteria questions. We'll be starting out with Marv on question number 1, which is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? Marvin?
I believe it is, and first comment was 159 notices were sent, and The city was one that commented they were okay with. In fact, it sounded like majority of the city council members didn't even know it was back there. And then we had one comment here today with some concerns against, but out of 159, one against, that ain't bad at all. Also, as we pulled in there and known, they run a very neat, clean operation. They always have. And when there was an issue here with their beef operation, they cleaned it up, taking care of it.
Okay. Anybody like to add to question number 1? Okay. Question number 2, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner and not permitted by the land use ordinance? Brent?
This is agricultural land that they're using for agricultural production now. It's reasonable to have 105 acres of agricultural land to further expand, but due to the proximity of this being close to the city of Royalton, they need to double that setback. So they're proposing to use it in a reasonable manner, but that's not permitted by the land use ordinance, and so that's why we're here.
Okay. Anybody else like to add? Well, I'd like to add to that, reasonable. It has an 82% odor offset. Again, at one point in time, 91 was the limit, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay, we no longer have that as a limit. It's just a point of information for us. So that means 18% of the year, 18% of the time, likely to be some odors. And as Amy pointed out, probably to the people nearest to them first, and then anybody downwind and on any specific day when barns are cleaned or whatever. I'd like to add to that, there are 2 other beef feedlots in the area, but we're looking at just this one tonight. And is it reasonable to continue with that size, a tier 2 feedlot with a beef feedlot that close to the city, which is probably the biggest reason for the 82% offset? I don't think it is reasonable. That's my opinion. Does anybody else would like to add to number 2?
Mr. Chair, is that, I thought I read 86, it's actually 82? Offset rating. 86, okay, so it's not as bad as you made it sound.
Thank you, Marv. Okay, anybody else on question number 2? Number 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? And I'll start out, I'm sorry, I should be at, yeah. I am on number 3, correct? I'm sorry, I got all turned around here. Will the issuance of variance maintain the essential character of the locality? And I'm up on that one. It is in a very good location, as was pointed out by others. The barn, you have to really be looking to even notice that there's, number 1, the first barn back is out there. Second barn will be farther away and behind it, so screened from it. The character will be maintained. And yeah, that's all I have to say about that. It's far off the road, it's well screened by trees, a large distance away. Okay, anybody else like to add to that? Number 4, is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Clint?
I think what's unique about it is part of the property is in that Royalton source water protection area. Where this proposed barn is going to be is out of it. When I look at this whole area, over half of it is farm fields, that Water Protection Act or area. And I'm not trying to downsize it at all. I'm just trying to say that, we're looking at a confinement barn getting added in here, And yes, it's too close to the city limits. But then when you look at the whole area being ag with this water source protection area, over half it's in fields. What goes on them fields? There's gonna be a lot more manure and things that go into that, them fields that are around that protection area. And I'm not sure how the manure stacking or the manure management plans are adapted for that and how much manure they can put in. But I think if we're looking at here, contamination thing side of it, I don't think that there is much to stand on that. The practical difficulty when you throw that all in, this is a ag-orientated town. There's ag all the way around it. And we have different rules and ordinances for feedlots than we do for other farming practices. But I think that they're far enough away with the wood, with the trees and the location where it's at. I think that it just makes it's hard for me to believe that this is a problem place as far as contaminating groundwater and things like that. Possibly some air problems, but I don't think much of that comes from that barn. We were standing there, we could hardly smell the barn when we were standing there. It could be from the other area. So I think when you put all the things together, is it in harmony? Is it reasonable? Does it maintain the essential character? I think that we could go along and say yes, the practical difficulty is just kind of what I stated.
Okay, thank you, Clint. Anybody else like to add to number 4? A true unique practical difficulty is really hard to come up with, but if we're just looking at the poultry barns, which I think we just are tonight, if we were looking at the beef, I'd say really no practical difficulty there, but just the poultry, they are covered, there's no open feedlot, there is a plan for, manure stacking in the future. That's probably what I would consider the practical difficulty to be. It's a unique feedlot that is covered and well vented, only cleaned twice a year, or full clean out, is it once a year? Yeah.
Barns? Oh, there's no full clean outs on the chicken barns anymore, just decaking.
Between each batch,
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. All right, so, and very minimal manure produced, really, for that size feedlot. So that's what I would call my take on a practical difficulty, the uniqueness of the feedlot. Anybody else on number 4? Okay, on to number 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners. John?
Well, you're expanding operations, your distance to town, the population of Royalton, they all feed into the actual need for a request to expand to the Tier 2 feedlot. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay, anybody else like to add to that? Go ahead,
Chair.
Claire.
I think what was stated before in our practical difficulty, we could throw in there that just the way the distances are created as far as how far away you have to be from the town of Royal, city of Royalton. I think the location of the barns, I think, was very well placed originally. When you put the second one in, that is also a very good place to put it. I think with the trees going around, it's protecting. There's a buffer between the barns and the city of Royalton from the trees that are around it. I believe that that helps with all this. So I think, just with all the different things that are out there, it's more than just the landowner. If anything, the landowners and previous landowners have done a really good job of having a placement of these facilities, is when we're talking the poultry side of it, I guess.
Thank you, Clint. I'd just like to add that the industry has changed over the years, the poultry industry in particular, especially on as you mentioned, relative to cleanouts and the amount of manure produced. Full cleanouts were the rule now. It's partial cleanouts and not a large volume. So we're still measuring animal units in the number of chickens versus the amount of manure that's produced or the amount of odor that's produced. So I think, yeah, one rule doesn't fit all, and that would be out of the landowner's control, how the county ordinance interprets that. Anybody else on number 5?
No, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Brent.
You know, not having been there, my thought is when you have a farm that's close to a city, oftentimes a city may make changes throughout time and annex in portions of land around them. I don't know what, or if any of this land around here has been annexed in by the city at some point along the way of the development of Royalton, but you know, that could be obviously actions other than the landowners or prior landowners. It's just the development of a city that changes what you're able to do as far as, you know, being permitted to do this. That's why we're here for variances, because you're in close proximity to that city limit.
Thank you, Brent. Anybody else on number 5? Not, we'll move on to number 6. Does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? We'll start with Marv.
I believe it does. He first talked about, the applicant talked about the manure stacking slab that he's planning for the future, so not contaminating the soil. Also talked with the city and the city council, and as I pointed out earlier, majority of them didn't even know it was there. The barn is plans on being placed even further away than the first barn. So I think there's much more consideration than just the financial end here.
Okay, thank you, Marv. Anybody else on number 6? Anybody else on number 6? Okay, then we're ready for the vote. Okay, is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? Marvin?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
And John?
Yes.
Number 2, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? Brent?
Yes.
Myself is no. Clint?
With the city council members voted yes, I go yes.
John?
Echoing Clint's comment, yes.
And Marvin?
Yes.
Okay, that's 4 yeses, 1 no. Number 5, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? I start first, yes. Clint?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Marvin?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Number 4, is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Clint?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Marvin?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
And myself is yes. Number 5, is the need for the variance created by the actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? John?
Yes.
Marvin?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Number 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Starting with Marvin?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
And John?
Yes.
Okay, the 6 questions have all been answered to the affirmative. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to approve this.
I'll second that. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, we'll proceed to vote. I'll call off. If you're in favor, aye. If you're opposed, say nay. Marvin?
Aye.
Brent?
Aye.
Myself is aye. Clint?
Aye.
And John?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
your next step then will be to apply for the conditional use permit to move tiers. And so then that's where that manure management plan, the environmental review, all of that needs to be submitted with your application. So that's your next step.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is Shannon Johnson. If applicants would like to come forward. 4731 Cable Road, Swanville, application for a variance to place a home within the setback to a feedlot, Swanville Township. Get the microphone nice and close and state your name for the record, please.
Shannon Johnston.
Thank you. All right, Amy?
I'm ready, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we're ready.
Okay, so again, this is a variance to place a home 400 feet from a Tier 2 feedlot, and this is located in Section 10 of Swanville Township. The ordinance reference for this request is 1209.1, and that requires a 660-foot setback from feedlots for non-feedlot residences. Here's a plat map of Swanville Township, and the red dot is the location of the parcel. And then here's the variance request received from the applicant. And then here's some imagery of the property. And then here are some photos taken at the site visit on May 12th. The applicant owns this 13.66 acre parcel located in Section 10 of Swanville Township. It is dually zoned agriculture and shoreland due to the Swan River running through the property. Approximately half of the parcel has wetland on it, and the floodplain overlaps with the wetland and reaches farther to the west than the wetland. So here is another map of the parcel with the wetland layer on and also the shoreland layer on. And then here is then with the floodplain boundaries in hot pink overlaid over all of that. A storage shed and 3 grain bins are currently on the property, and the property shares a driveway with the property to the west. There is a recently approved Tier 2 feedlot, which is 301 to 650 animal units, on the adjacent parcel to the west. The applicant previously owned the feedlot and sold it to Jerome and Mary Rose Capco. And then here is a zoomed out aerial photograph, including the recently sold feedlot. The applicant is proposing to build a home on the parcel. It would be 400 feet from the Capco's nearest animal holding area. The Capco feedlot has a 94% offset rating using the setback from the proposed home. And then here is an aerial photograph from the nearest animal holding areas and the approximate location of the new home. The required setback for non-feedlot residents to a Tier 2 feedlot is 660 feet. This would be a 260-foot encroachment on the setback. This is a limited site due to the feedlot setback, wetland, and floodplain. The available building envelope that meets all setbacks is within floodplain. And so here again is the aerial photograph with all the floodplain and the wetland layers on, and then also the building envelope that is outlined there. The surrounding area is made up of cropland, small-scale feedlots, and rural residences. The applicable comprehensive land use plan goals is agriculture, goal A1, objective 1, goal A2, A4, and then objective 3. Natural resources and open spaces, goal C2, shoreline development, goal D1. Then the applicable Morrison County comprehensive water plan goals and objectives is groundwater, goal 1 and 2. Surface water goal, land use and development goal, objective A. 19 notices were sent. No comment was received prior to the public hearing. And then here are your finding of fact and decision questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Amy. Does the applicant have anything to add to the staff report?
No, when you guys were out there on last Friday, the spot that I showed you was the higher spot, so you got ample room for septic and to put a well and to not encroach on the floodplain in the meadow, so.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Any questions for the applicant, for staff?
Mr. Chair, again, I would just make the comment that I was not out there on Friday with the rest of the group, but I have been out there on previous visits, I think back when we did the
Yeah, you were out there
land sales and whatnot, so
2
I'm
years
familiar with this property.
Okay, thanks, Brent. Yeah, I forgot to add that right away, that we were out on the 12th at about 1 PM, 4 of us plus Amy. All right, any other questions? Marvin?
Mr. Chair, first, I think you had mentioned about the buildable area, which I don't know if we want to bring that map back up where that is, and that would be right near the road or way to, that would possibly be the east, I believe.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Amy.
it's kind of a teardrop shape. This is the outline of it right here. So this is the buildable area in here.
Yep. And your reasoning behind it were, why did you not want to build in that area?
Well, like this year, we had a lot of water, a lot of snow, good example. The water was right at the ground level in that floodplain. It was there.
Okay, so that may be your practical difficulty
You
over
know,
there.
It might be once in 50 years, but it was still there. It could be once, or it could happen again next year. Who knows? You know, Mother Nature does what she does.
So the next question I have, and I'm hoping Amy can go over this, or reiterating, if this variance is granted, how it would affect the Capcos and their feelings over that. Would you please go over that?
Mr. Chair, feedlot setbacks are reciprocal. And so if this home is built within the setback to those animal holding areas, any expansion of those animal holding areas or any establishment of additional animal holding areas would need, so any new establishment would need to be 660 feet away from that home. And any expansion of the existing animal holding area buildings would be in a variant situation to expand.
And if they also wanted to add on to the house or something, they wouldn't have to do anything that the house that he's living in, because it's part of the feedlot operation. Capco's correct?
Capco, the home on the Capco property is the feedlot residence.
Yes.
And so that, the setback does not apply. The setback is only to non-feedlot residences, and that one is
Okay.
considered the feedlot residence. so.
Okay. I just wanted to reiterate what I was thinking. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Marv. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, just bear with me for a second, it's gonna take a minute. In our agriculture, we're zone ag here. A1, it says ensure that the county provides and protects areas most suitable for a strong and stable agricultural industry, including but not limited to crop production, animal husbandry, dairy, meat production, and pastures and similar uses. Objective 1, ensure the county policies and ordinances do not restrict farming practices except as necessary to ensure compliance with law or protect public health and safety. So Shannon, you've dairy farmed your whole life, pretty much.
Yep.
Okay, and you have a good relationship with Capcos.
Yeah, it's,
Okay, when we do a variance, it don't go to you, it goes to the land.
I understand that.
Okay, so now you farmed all your life. How would you have felt if somebody would have moved in close and it would affect anything you do moving forward on your farm?
This isn't affecting them or me. I mean, say I had the farm and Capcos want to put a house there, I wouldn't have a problem with it because it's their land. I mean, we're used to animals, we're used to feedlots, we're used to all that stuff.
But what I'm saying is 10 years, 20 years from now, 30 years, hopefully you live a long time. When you're gone, maybe Capcos are gone, that farm and that house is tied together with this variance forever.
Yep.
So
I
anybody
understand
that ever farms it's affected by putting a house there.
Yep, no, I understand
Okay.
that.
So that was just kind of my question, my comment to this or whatever, so that's all I have, Mr. Chair, I believe at this time.
Thank you, Clint. Anybody else like to add? Any other comments? If not, we'll open it up to public input. Open to public input at this time. Go up to the microphone, state your name for the record.
Jerry Capco. We bought the farm in negotiation that like if he'd ever want to build a house, we wouldn't have no trouble with it. And we grew up together, we had no problems with anything. But what would happen, like I say my son would take over in 30 years from now, or say 10 years from now, or 5, Shannon would sell it to somebody else. I know we talked about, eventually we'll get that 14 acres or whatever it is. But what happens if we want and he would sell it to somebody else? So could those people stop us from expanding or anything? You know what I mean, if we wanted, I know Shannon won't.
Okay, we'll address that question after.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering too. But otherwise, I don't have no problem with them doing it, So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay, is there any other public input at this time? Okay, any other public input? One last time, is there any other public input at this time? No, with no public input, we'll close this portion of the meeting to public input. All right, are we ready to go over the questions, or?
Would you like me to address the question Mr. Capco
Oh,
asked?
I'm sorry, yes, please do.
Okay. So I can only speak to what the regulations are now. 5-10 years from now, our ordinance may be different, but today, with the way the ordinance is written, if that property were to sell and someone else owned it, and say you were looking at doing an expansion within the setback to that home, you would need a variance, and that property owner could certainly comment against it. Doesn't mean it would sway it either way, but they would have the ability to comment against that for whatever reason they state. Also, if you expanded and went to a tier 3, for example, you would need a public hearing at that point, and that property owner would certainly be noticed and would be given the right to provide comment related to the impact that would have on them. So yes, they would have the ability, just like Mr. Johnston has the ability to do that when you would ask for something that requires a public hearing.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Sorry, no discussion out in the audience, thank you. Okay, are we ready to go to the criteria questions? Amy, one question before we do. Building in the floodplain. It's allowed. What about sewers? What are the holdbacks to building in the floodplain?
If you're building in the floodplain, if we determine you're not building in the floodway, which I don't believe this is, you would need to meet certain elevation criteria. You need to be 3 feet above, your lowest floor must be 3 feet above the base flood elevation in order to build. If you are financing, you will more than likely have to carry flood insurance because any federally backed loan will require flood insurance. And then for septic systems, then there are some special design requirements that you must have and features that you must have on a system if it is located within the floodplain. So it elevates the design criteria and the hoops you need to jump through in order to get a permit.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Brent.
I just had a question. I'm not finding it. I'm looking for it. How many acres is this, Amy? 13 point something?
Yes, 13.66, I
Okay.
believe.
Thank you.
Yeah, 13.66.
Mr. Chair,
Is that Marv? Oh, John. You got an echo. Go ahead, John.
of the 13.66, how many of it is in the floodplain? Approximately.
Well, in looking at this map, this is the outline of the parcel right here. And then the floodplain comes like this. So I would say about 50%.
Thank you.
Okay, are we ready for the criteria questions? Okay, question number one, we'll start with Brent on that one. Is the request in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan?
Mr. Chair, the request here is to build a home within the setback to a feedlot. This is somewhat unique in that this land was split and created to make that 13.6, and now we're at the question of whether or not to build on that property and or where to build on it. Where he proposes to build is not allowed by the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance due to restrictions set. So he has to seek out a variance to do this. So in that regard, it is in harmony with the purposes for requesting the variance to do what he's asking us to do. On the flip side of that, there is a building envelope that allows him to build somewhere else on the property, but I think we're probably going to hear that that's maybe not as suitable for a lot of different reasons, so.
Okay, thank you. Anybody like to add to that?
Mr. Chair, I would say no in our comp plan for A1, objectives 1 and 3. I'll just read 3. Recognize the issues of feedlots and animal confinement areas with other land uses such as residential, commercial development, and utilize new and existing controls to minimize conflicts and interest. So it's going to be a problem forever if they ever need to do anything on the farm. We're in ag zoning. We also didn't bring up it's a shared driveway. It's not an issue right now. The next landowners, it could be. That's just my observation.
Okay, anybody else on number one? Yeah, I'd like to add that I think Clint did a very good job of reminding us that the variances are for the land, not for the landowner, not for the applicant. They go on, and they have repercussions. And as Clint has pointed out, none of these ag-related goals are upheld with this variance request. Okay, anybody else on number one? Okay, then number two is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance. Starting out with me on that one. Well, let's see, we've got this is the third time this property has been in front of us. Second time that we were on the site. The applicant sold a feedlot and knew about setbacks. At one point, he was denied a split from the feedlot residence to be split off from the feedlot. That was denied. Now, he wants to create a similar feedlot residence. It wouldn't be considered a feedlot residence, but it would be the same thing as. And, as Mr. Capco observed, somebody else is going to move in someday. How will that affect him? And again, it's unreasonable for the applicant to be coming forward with this request at this time. Anybody else like to add to that?
Mr. Chair,
Clint?
I would just say, I kind of agree somewhat with what you just said, but also, at least with his planning, I think it's reasonable to put a house on 13.66 acres. I think he did some thought on where to put it, up on the higher part of the ground. I think in that aspect, proposing the 13.66 acres, in that aspect, yes, it's reasonable where he's trying to put this house. It's up on the high ground. I think anywhere that he puts it on this land, it's not gonna meet setback. He's either gonna be in the floodplain or he's gonna be right out by the road to be able to make that extra 260 feet that he needs. So I think with his thought of putting it by them grain bins up on the high ground, I think that's reasonable.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Marv.
I'd like to also add to this. First, if I heard him correctly, Clint made a comment about the driveway. I believe the applicant said illegality, he's got it in legality, stated that there's going to be a shared driveway, so that would probably going forward, that will not be an issue. Probably is part of the deed. And looking at this piece of property, the way it was broken up before and trying to keep a portion of it living out in the country, I think he's trying to salvage what he can to still be out in the country. And looking at where to build, if it was my piece of property, I'd be wanting to build it right where he's at there. So I think he's being reasonable in that respect. Could he put it more to the east? Absolutely. But as he talked about the floodplain, could he put it closer to the road? Yeah, it would look really ridiculous over there too. So, they talked about down the road selling this piece of property. That probably will happen, and the person that would probably purchase it would say, okay, hey, this is the ag area, I'm willing to accept it, it's 13 point some acres, and this is what I got, and I'm willing to live with it. That's just my comments to that.
Okay, thank you, Marv. Anybody else? Okay, then we'll go on to question number 3. Will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Clint?
Around the neighborhood, it's farms mixed with a few homes. So I think, yes, that would maintain the essential character of the locality. You drive up and down that road, there's farms, there's houses up and down there. I don't know if it maintains the because of the setback, but at least from the looks and optics of it, it ain't gonna be much different than some of the other stuff up and down that road, so.
Okay, thank you, Clint. Anybody else on number 3? I'd like to just add the observation that that dwelling in that location would clearly look like a feedlot residence. Wouldn't look too much different than the other one, and you'd kind of make you wonder why 2 feedlot residents, or why locate like that? I don't think that's the essential character we want in ag. Located in the building envelope, it looks like another rural residence. This looks all about feedlot if we're in the proposed location. So I would say it does not maintain the essential character of the locality. Any additions on number 3? Number 4. Is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? John?
I mean, as we went over the map and figure 4 there and where that building envelope is and the 13 acres, approximately 6 of it sitting somewhere within the floodplain, I mean, it's a small place to build where you wouldn't have to be in here requesting a variance, and even in the location that it's in, it's still susceptible in some way, shape, or form. So that's pretty unique to this specific property, and why he's in here requesting a little bit of room between the water and where we want to put the home up.
Okay. Anybody else like to add to number 4? Well, looking at number 4, practical difficulty. Properties with limitations are not unique. Almost all properties have some limitations. This is over a 13-acre property, and over 6.5 acres of it is floodplain or wetland or a waterway. But that leaves the other 6 acres. And in that 6 acres, there is a building envelope. You can build in a floodplain. Amy went through the issues there. So the floodplain itself is not a practical difficulty. There is a building envelope of 79,638 square feet. Right now, the county on ordinance is 1 acre, 43,560 square feet. So, almost twice as big as the minimum requirement, just the building envelope, let alone the 13.6 acres of property. So nothing unique about the alleged practical difficulty. Okay, anybody else on number 4? Okay, number 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Marvin?
Well, this could be a twofold answer to this one. Part of it, he created himself by selling that property off. The other part is maybe I should have done a little more research and seeing where, before he sold that off the way he did, doing something about keeping a bigger building envelope, but it is what it is. And anyhow, part of it is, the 50% of the property is floodplain, and he does relatively have a small building envelope. So there's 2 portions to that.
Okay, anybody else on number 5? Yeah, I'd agree with Marvin in that, the applicant should have been very aware of ordinance by this time. I recall back when we realized that the applicant had retained this property, and my question at the time was, is there a building envelope on it? And yes, there is. So I thought, well, he knows what he's doing, and we shouldn't have to be hearing about that again. But here we are today with a building envelope. Probably not the unique one he wants. Maybe you got to look at this. It really isn't a buildable property, perhaps. I think it's the need for the variance is the landowner's decision on where to place the structure versus the building envelope. Personal preference, not any unique features to the property. Okay, anybody else on number 5? Number 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Brent, you can start us out.
Well, I think it involves more than economic considerations, because we're not requesting a variance to save any money here. We're going to build a home, so he's retired from farming, trying to build a home, but we're struggling with the floodplain, the shoreland setbacks, the feedlot issues, the future of this 13 acres. If we back up to the alleged practical difficulty, the only thing that we're seeing there is the half of this being potentially in floodplain or shoreland waters. There's a lot of things coming into play here, depending on what we use as the practical difficulty, if there is a practical difficulty. That's all I got to say.
Okay. Anybody else on number 6? I guess I'd just like to add that, as I've already stated, this is the applicant's preference versus the ordinance, and there are, as pointed out, there's several considerations on this property. Is it more than just about money? Probably yes, but it's mostly applicant's preference, and that's isn't a yes answer to number 6. Remember, he's asking for a 60-foot variance, or a 260-foot variance, not a 50-foot, not a 60-foot, but a 260-foot variance. I think there were other choices he could have made. All right, anybody else on number 6? Okay, we'll proceed to vote. Is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? Starting with Brent.
No.
Myself is no. Clint?
No.
John?
No.
And Marv?
No.
That's 5 noes. Number 2, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? Myself is no. Clint?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Marv? And Brent?
Yes.
It's 4 yes, 1 no. Number 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Clint?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is no. 4 yes, 1 no. Number 4, is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? John?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
No.
Myself is no. Clint?
No.
That's 3 no, 2 yes. Number 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Marvin?
No.
Brent?
No.
Myself is no. Clint?
No.
John?
Yes.
That's 1 yes, 4 no. 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Brent?
I'm going to say no.
Myself answer is no. Clint?
I'll say yes.
John?
Yes.
And Marv?
Yes.
That's 3 yes and 2 no. We have 1, 2, 3 no's and 2 yeses. Is that correct?
1, 2, 3 no's, 3 yes.
Okay. Is there a motion to deny this variance request?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
I'll second that. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll proceed to vote. In favor of the motion, say aye. Opposed, say no. Brent?
Aye.
Myself is aye. Clint?
Aye.
John?
No.
And Marvin?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Your variance request is denied. Any questions? You can get back to Amy and what your alternatives might be. Well, that concludes our business for the evening. Is there minutes? Is there anybody?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
I'll second that. All in favor, just say aye.
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 Opposed? The minutes are accepted as read. Any old business
No, Mr. Chair, I don't have any.
and new business?
Nope, I don't have any of that either.
Okay, I think we've already seen the letter for our next,
Yes, so I think we have one of each? Yeah, we have one variance, one CUP.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion, we adjourn.
Okay, I'll second that motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Meeting adjourned, 7:51.